主动就是舔狗，讲道理就是 PUA。
If a guy takes the initiative, he's called desperate. If he tries to reason, he's accused of manipulation. If he talks about the future, they say he's just making empty promises. So how is he supposed to pursue someone? All you hear is, he has to be at least 1.8 meters tall. Who even qualifies?
有些女孩子啊，就是不是那么的爱跟男朋友。
Some girls don't really love their boyfriends. They just see them as providers, free labor, emotional outlets, or someone who will always be there no matter what. This happens a lot these days. Guys who go through this naturally become scared. They're afraid that no matter how much effort they put in, being patient, caring, and supportive, they'll end up with nothing at the end. They don't want to get hurt. The men in the video are mostly in their 20s, the prime age for marriage, but they're openly stating they don't want to pursue relationships anymore. They have no desire to date and have taken a passive or even negative attitude towards love. They don't seem anxious about not getting married or having children. According to the China Population and Employment Statistics Yearbook 2023, by the end of 2020, China had 240 million single people, 17% of the total population. The 7th National Census from 2020 also showed that China had 34.9 million more men than women, with 17.5 million more marriage-age men than women. With such a significant gender imbalance, you'd think Chinese men would feel a sense of urgency and be more proactive in finding a partner. But the reality is the opposite. They've lost confidence and motivation. It's like a group of starving people sitting in front of a feast but refusing to eat. So where exactly is the problem? In rural China, getting married often drains the groom's family of their life savings. Every step of the bride's journey from her parents' home to her new family requires money. So if any part of the payment falls short, the wedding won't happen. In one case, a bride demanded an extra 88,000 yuan as she got out of the car on the wedding day. The groom couldn't afford it, and despite his mother's desperate pleas, he called off the wedding. Are you saying you'd lose money by giving me 88,000?
I don't have 88,000.
Who doesn't prepare 88,000 for getting out of the car?
My family doesn't.
Then your family is poor. In China, the matchmaking scene is split in two. If you visit rural areas during the new year, you'll see that even an average-looking girl working in a factory in a small town will have a long line of suitors bringing gifts, waiting for a chance to meet her. The girl's parents confidently list their demands for dowry and other conditions, while the groom's mother humbly begs them to lower the price. Meanwhile, the groom's father stands in the courtyard, deeply worried about the exorbitant costs.
23岁之女每天被全方面的裹挟着相亲。
In one case, a 23-year-old woman was forced to meet 7 or 8 potential suitors a day. She had so many arranged meetings that she became numb to the whole process. The line of cars waiting outside her house showed just how many men were competing for her hand. Kid, stop being so picky. Do you even realize how hard it is to find a wife these days? Do you know how few girls there are in the village? I went through so much trouble to set this up for you.
For many rural girls, multiple arranged meetings in a single day aren't just about finding a match, it's a transaction. Many have brothers, and the dowry they receive is often used to help their brothers get married. Matchmakers don't care about compatibility. As long as the groom is single and the bride's family agrees on the price, they'll set it up. This has led to absurd situations where young women returning home for the holidays are introduced to men 20 years older than them or even men with children from previous marriages. Some are even forced to meet men with intellectual disabilities, while their parents and matchmakers praise these men for being honest and reliable. In extreme cases, young men are set up with pregnant women who don't even know who the father of their child is, simply because there are no other available women in the village. One heartbreaking case involved 17-year-old Xiao Yan. Her parents forced her to marry a disabled man after accepting a 300,000 yuan dowry. She suffered abuse in her new home and begged her parents to return the money so she could escape. But her parents had already spent it on a house for her brother's marriage. When she tried to run away, her parents and the groom's relatives surrounded her, forcing her to go back. They told her if she refused, she'd have to pay back the 300,000 yuan herself. I'm her mother. Do you think I'd harm her?
I know you're her mother, but you need to respect her wishes. Is this how you solve problems? Do you really think she'll go back willingly?
Watching this young girl sobbing in the car, helpless and alone, it's clear this wasn't a marriage. It was human trafficking in broad daylight. These situations have become common in rural China. But why are women in rural matchmaking so highly sought after? The reason is no secret. Deep-rooted gender discrimination means that for decades, families have prioritized having sons. Many women choose to abort female fetuses, risking their own health just to have a boy. This has created entire villages where barely any young women remain. The few girls who are born are treated as commodities. Many drop out of school early, do hard labor, and are constantly reminded they're a burden to the family. They're forced into arranged marriages, and the dowry money they bring in goes towards securing a bride for their brothers. Even those who manage to get a college education and work in the city eventually get a call from home, demanding they send money for their brother's wedding. In rural areas, marriage has become a financial deal. High dowries are not just an obstacle for grooms, they're also the price tag for daughters being sold. The very families that are now struggling to find wives for their sons are the same ones who once rejected their own daughters. Meanwhile, things in the cities are completely different. According to Wu Lingguang, CEO of the matchmaking platform Jiayuan, the ratio of men to women registered at offline dating agencies is 1 to 5.6. In some cities, the imbalance is shocking. In Chengdu's matchmaking market, the ratio is 1 to 43. In Hangzhou and Xiamen, it's around 1 to 40. At large matchmaking events, most attendees are women. In one case, a supposed 1,000-person matchmaking event only had around 300 people show up, and all of them were women. The reality is that women outnumber men in cities. Data from various municipal statistical yearbooks show that whether it's Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, or Shenzhen, or second-tier cities like Hangzhou, Suzhou, and Xiamen, there are more women than men. In urban areas, 73% of the population is female, while only 69% is male. Why are there more women in cities? According to education statistics from 2022, out of 4.68 million new undergraduate students in China, 2.95 million were women, while only 1.73 million were men. That means for every 100 college students, 63 are women and only 37 are men. Naturally, these educated women stay in the cities to work. On top of that, rural families still follow the tradition where sons inherit property, while daughters are expected to leave. In reality, girls aren't just encouraged to marry, they're pushed out of their own homes. That's why many rural girls leave for the cities as teenagers, seeking a way to survive. On one hand, there are 35 million more men than women in China. On the other, cities have far more women than men. That's why we see such a stark contrast, rural men lining up for matchmaking and struggling with high dowry costs, while urban women in their 30s publicly declare they don't need a dowry or are even willing to marry down. Going back to the men at the beginning of the video, they're also under immense pressure in the dating market. In a struggling economy, they already face intense competition at work. Their long hours barely cover basic living expenses, making dating feel like an extra burden. At the same time, materialism is taking over. And many men no longer believe in slow, genuine relationships. Fast-track dating has become the norm. Instead of gradually building a connection, many are more concerned with whether they can get the girl. Sincerity is fading, and a pure-hearted approach to love no longer fits with this fast-paced world. Society pressures people to climb higher, while declining moral values pull them down. Caught in this tug-of-war, many men simply give up and lie flat, even if they know it's just an escape rather than a solution. As a result, China's marriage and birth rates have hit record lows. The number of marriage registrations has declined for 8 consecutive years. In 2021, it dropped below 8 million, lower than in 1986. By 2024, China's birth rate ranked second to last in the world, only above South Korea. In the first half of 2024, only 4.3 million babies were born nationwide, and the number of elementary schools shrank from over 200,000 to 140,000. The rapid pace of urbanization and rising living costs, especially housing, have placed immense financial burden on young people. In top-tier and second-tier cities, home prices are so high that even those with stable jobs struggle to afford a place to live. Without a house or car, marriage becomes nearly impossible. A typical groom's family often spends their entire life savings on the wedding, while the newlyweds take on hefty mortgage loans, starting their married life burdened by debt. The government has tried to lower marriage barriers. Since 2019, couples no longer need a household registration booklet to get married. An ID card is enough. But at the same time, getting a divorce has become increasingly difficult. Since 2021, even if both parties agree to separate, they must first go through a 30-day cooling-off period. If either person changes their mind, even on the 29th day, they can cancel the divorce application, keeping the marriage legally intact. This easy-to-enter, hard-to-leave system makes young people feel like marriage is a trap, discouraging them from tying the knot in the first place. Despite this reality, in 2019, the Chinese government introduced the two-child policy, followed by the three-child policy in 2021. A promotional video called "I Support Having 3 Kids" featured 8 fathers unanimously saying they supported having 3 children. But when asked real concerns, like how to afford an apartment in a good school district, one father suggested, if you can't afford a bigger home, just renovate your small one. Open up the living room and dining room for a play area, turn the study into a bedroom, and there you have an extra room. This response left viewers speechless. The comment section was flooded with reactions. But can we even afford a small house? Not every small home even has a study. This is pure satire. These are all actors. They don't even sound like real people. Do they actually believe what they're saying? It's easy to talk when you don't have to live it. One comment perfectly summed up public sentiment. As a man, I really wanted to listen to these 8 guys share their perspectives, but I never expected their lines to be this out of touch. It's simply unrealistic, or you could call it a delusional fantasy. In other words, why not eat cake? The fathers in the video were teachers, doctors, entrepreneurs, and executives at state-owned enterprises. But what about the 900 million people in China earning less than 1,000 yuan per month? Do they have the financial means to raise multiple children? In China, many households are already fatherless, where mothers take on most of the child-rearing responsibilities. Yet in this campaign, the voices of mothers, the ones truly responsible for raising children, were completely ignored. When netizens asked hard-hitting questions, all they got in response were hollow government slogans. Some online comments mocked the campaign. I'm starting to think the director is trolling on purpose. I laughed my way through this entire ad. Who wrote this script? Someone from Mars? The ad's creator is supposed to be an industry veteran, but in their group chat, they actually thought each video was ideologically sound. The sheer lack of awareness is astonishing. What drained their creativity, time, or their own ignorance? Back in the days of the one-child policy, the government put out slogans such as, "Whoever has extra children will be driven to bankruptcy. Whoever has extra children will see their family destroyed." The scars from these extreme policies of 1979 still linger, and now the Chinese Communist Party is trying to undo the damage with equally extreme measures. Instead of addressing real issues, they continue rolling out policies detached from reality, relying on empty propaganda while failing to provide necessary support. In the end, these efforts only backfire. In daily life, public childcare support remains inadequate. Daycare centers and kindergartens are scarce and expensive. Maternity leave and childcare leave policies exist on paper, but under intense job market competition, they're practically useless. Parents also face skyrocketing education costs, an overly stressful academic environment, and deeply unequal access to educational resources. These are the tangible, solvable problems that the government should be addressing, yet they're ignored. At its core, China's declining birth rate is an economic issue. The burden that society should bear has been dumped onto individuals. Why are people refusing to marry and have children? It all comes down to one thing: a lack of financial security. The government wants to enjoy the economic benefits of a growing population, but refuses to take responsibility for supporting families. They don't care about marriage or divorce rates, only the birth rate. More babies mean more consumer demand, boosting the economy. Once these babies grow up, they become workers who drive productivity and pay taxes. In the past, having children benefited families directly, but today, in an open economy, the productivity of those children benefits society as a whole. Reproduction is essentially providing laborers for the system. Yet despite this collective benefit, the government forces individuals to bear the costs alone. Those who refuse to have children are seen as politically incorrect, but where is the money supposed to come from? Families demand high dowries as an informal birth subsidy, which fuels gender conflicts. Companies are made to cover maternity leave. leading to workplace discrimination against women. These contradictions force people to ask, is the Chinese government really working for the well-being of its people, or just adding more pressure on them? Soaring housing prices and household debt, brutally long work hours, relentless job competition, overwhelming social and family expectations, all of these pressures consume young people's emotional and mental energy. They have neither the time nor the capacity for love. Their understanding of relationships has turned increasingly negative and passive. But is this because they have truly given up on love? Have they really abandoned all desire for deep, meaningful relationships? Faced with a difficult present and an uncertain future, many young Chinese feel their own lives are already unstable and unhappy. How can they take responsibility for the next generation? How can they promise their children a secure and fulfilling life when they can't even ensure their own? The erosion of human connection, declining moral standards, distorted societal values, and the government's apathy and harsh policies have left young people with no faith in building healthy relationships.